Once upon a time, there was a guy named Mr. Merton. He was a good-looking young man, always curious about people and their lives. Mr. Merton had this friend, Lord Murchison. One day, Lord Murchison told him about an amazing woman he had met at a party. Her name was Mrs. Erlin, and she seemed to have a fascinating aura around her. Well, Mr. Merton got really interested in Mrs. Erlin. He wanted to know more about her and find out if there was something mysterious or hidden in her past. So he asked Lord Murchison if he could introduce them, and Lord Murchison said, "Sure, why not?" When Mr. Merton finally met Mrs. Erlin, he was completely taken aback by her beauty and charm. There was something about her that made him want to know more, to dig deeper into her life and find out what secrets she might be keeping. They started spending a lot of time together, and Mr. Merton couldn't get her out of his mind. He was so curious about her past that he couldn't stop himself from asking questions. He wanted to know everything, even things that might not be his business to know. Mrs. Erlin seemed like a smart lady. She knew that Mr. Merton was trying to uncover her secrets, but she didn't want to share everything with him. She said,
"Hey, everyone has secrets. Some things are best left private. It's the mystery that makes life interesting."
But Mr. Merton was on a mission. He was determined to find out what Mrs. Erlin was hiding. He kept asking her about her past, hoping she would slip up and tell him something juicy. One day, Mr. Merton decided to visit Mrs. Erlin at her place. He thought he might get more out of her in a relaxed setting. As they sat together, he couldn't resist asking her again.
Come on, tell me your secret. I won't tell anyone.
Mrs. Erlin looked at him with a sad smile and said,
"My dear, there was a time when I had a secret, a dark one. But that's all in the past now. I've moved on, and I'd rather not dwell on it."
Well, that didn't stop Mr. Merton. He became even more determined to find out what her secret was. He became sort of obsessed with it. He started asking people who knew her, trying to dig up any information that might give him a clue. He approached Lord Murchison and other acquaintances, trying to find out if they knew anything about Mrs. Erlin's past. He asked them if she had any shady connections or if there were any rumors about her. He even followed her around secretly, like some kind of detective. He hoped he would catch her doing something suspicious or get a lead on her past. He would discreetly watch her when she wasn't aware, hoping to uncover any hints or secrets she might be hiding. In his quest for answers, he also tried to search public records and newspapers for any mentions of Mrs. Erlin. He thought that maybe he could find something about her past that would finally satisfy his curiosity. But the more he searched, the more he realized that maybe Mrs. Erlin wasn't as mysterious as he thought. She seemed like a regular person who had lived her life just like anyone else. Disappointed, Mr. Merton confronted her and said,
I thought you had a big secret, but it turns out you're just like everyone else. What's the big deal?
Mrs. Erlin smiled sadly and replied,
"Well, Yeah, I had my share of secrets back in the day. But I've changed, and my past doesn't define me anymore. What matters is who I am now.
Mr. Merton learned an important lesson that day. He realized that everyone has a past, and it's not always cool to pry into someone's private stuff. What matters most is the person they've become and the present they live in. From that day on, Mr. Merton let go of his obsession with Mrs. Erlin's secret. He learned to appreciate her for who she was, mysterious past or not. They stayed friends, and he valued her for her kindness, intelligence, and grace. So, the beauty without a secret remained a mystery, but Mr. Merton finally understood that some mysteries are better left unsolved.